premiums. How do you pay if you reinsure and the damage is so of this magnitude? It's an entirely new paradigm shift. How do you pay? You may not be able to, even Lloyd's may not be able to pay. And the disaster will even be far more disastrous than this is only the second most disastrous. This issue is being discussed at the UNFPCC, the Conference of Parties, and hopefully in 3 years in Paris, we will come up with a global deal. And the global deal is going to be an enlightened, humanitarian, well-calculated, actuarial response. You are doing the same actuarial calculations as you are doing for the disasters which are God-caused. But this is man-made cause, according to our science. That's the mainstream of thinking now, put out by the IPCC of this gentleman from India, headed by a gentleman from India, Pachauri. So I'm not saying that I have an absolute and a total criticism and debunking your proposal, but this is the usual hazard response. You will have to view this because it's a new paradigm shift in what the United Nations is doing, and perhaps the intervention that are emerging there, and I hope it's going to work out, in Lima especially, the Ban Ki-moon Fund, the Green Fund, will cover the disaster instead of the insurance. Because these are not going to be patchwork ruins, death here and there, but it's going to be a sweep across communities. You didn't have an insurance when you had this in World War II. You had a Marshall Plan. We didn't have an insurance when we were occupied by the Japanese. They did a reparation. Insurance, I warn, may be able to collect some premiums because people will be desperate. But the problem later is how to settle the ruin. And I have this distributed, ladies and gentlemen. This was deliberated at the UN for more than 2 hours. Because I wanted to ensure...
The insurance market annually provides protection of $300 billion. The event we just tragically witnessed here in the Philippines was a loss of an economic loss of about $13 billion. There is plenty of capacity, I can assure you, in the world to support the Philippines. There is no restriction on the amount of capacity. $50 billion has been liberated from pension funds post-Sandy. So effectively, capacity is not a problem. The other thing to say is that insurance isn't a private sector entity. We, as the industry and the insurance sector, is delivered through public means, and in many countries, not least the United States, flood insurance is a public entity. In many parts of the world, it's through mutual and cooperatives, and in other parts of the world, it's through private sector, and in many parts of the world, it's a hybrid. And I do encourage us all to begin to dissolve away these divisions between public, private, and mutual. Ultimately, the maths of risk are fundamental. They transcend all those things, and we must all contribute either as...
Look at what the UNFPCC is doing, and especially in the coming 3 years, when the framework is being shaped for carbon reduction in Lima, and ultimately when the deal is done in Paris. When the deal is done in Paris, the private sector can come in and perhaps hook on whatever space there is in the policy. As of now, I see that the pervasive policy must be intervention. It's not insurance. It's not going to be like the usual insurance paradigm that we experience. There's going to be a typhoon, babayaran tayo. Hindi. There has to be a big fund, a global fund, a human fund, the Ban Ki-moon Fund. And then it's not insurance that will come in. It's going to be rehabilitation. Rehabilitation, like a World War Marshall Plan rehabilitation. And the rehabilitation fund cannot be taken from the poor, which unfortunately, like the Philippines, is the usual victim of these disasters, to which we have very little contribution dahil Kukunti naman ang carbon na binubuga natin dun eh.